Imagine a surgical theater.
Okay.
On the table is a patient, and there's this machine that is methodically overwriting their brain.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, completely erasing a lifetime of memories, fears, loves, everything. And it's replacing them with the consciousness of a dead man from another era.
That is a deeply unsettling image.
Right. And the wild part is, this isn't an act of war. In the world we are exploring today, this kind of terrifying erasure of the self is like the mandatory entry fee for total utopian world peace.
It really is a profound thought experiment.
Yeah.
And it sits right at the center of a story that was honestly decades ahead of its time.
Absolutely. So if you're joining us today, get ready, because we are stepping into a genuinely mind-bending landscape.
We really are.
Our mission today is to take a comprehensive look at a science fiction novel from 1960 called Venus Plus X, written by Theodore Sturgeon. We're going to completely unpack the source material we have on this.
Right. The goal is to understand how a book written over 60 years ago attempted to dismantle what it called the war between the sexes.
Yeah, and it did that by imagining a society entirely, fundamentally, without gender.
But before we step through that door, we really need to set some ground rules with you, the listener.
Yeah, that's crucial.
The source material we're analyzing today tackles gender identity, biological sex, social constructs, social engineering.
Heavy stuff.
Very heavy. These are issues that are at the absolute boiling point of modern political discourse right now. You see it debated endlessly in both left-wing and right-wing political spheres today.
Exactly. So let's be crystal clear right up front. Our job today isn't to take a side.
No, not at all.
We are not validating a modern political stance, and we are absolutely not endorsing Sturgeon's underlying viewpoints.
We are just your impartial guides through a 1960 thought experiment.
Right. Our sole purpose is to impartially report on the ideas presented in the novel, exactly as they are reflected in our provided source material.
We are essentially just dissecting a historical artifact of speculative fiction.
Yeah.
Nothing more, nothing less.
Well said. So let's step into that artifact.
Let's do it.
The novel opens with this classic, super disorienting scenario. A man named Charlie Johns wakes up. He's 27 years old, and he has absolutely no idea where he is.
Total blank slate.
Yeah. And the environment he finds himself in is, well, it's startling. It's this completely enclosed, technologically immaculate wonderland.
It's very pristine.
Super pristine. The climate is perfectly controlled. It's always sunny, completely shielded from any outside harm. It's almost like waking up inside a high-tech terrarium.
And crucially, Charlie is suffering from profound amnesia.
Right.
He doesn't know how he got into this terrarium. He barely even knows who he is.
His memory is just gone.
Almost entirely. His
Yeah.
whole grasp on his own existence is tethered to just two fragmented memories.
A woman named Laura and a teacher he once had named Miss Moran.
Exactly. That is the absolute entirety of his anchor to reality.
Now, I have to be honest here. When I first read about this setup in the notes, my immediate reaction was like a bit of an eye roll.
The amnesia trope.
Yeah. Amnesia is such a tired sci-fi trope. I mean, it feels like a really lazy way for an author to just, have the protagonist bump their head so the supporting characters have an excuse to explain the entire world to the reader.
Just a vehicle for an exposition dump?
Right. Is Sturgeon just using this as a cheap trick?
Well, it's a perfectly valid skepticism. I mean, the confused everyman time traveler is a structural staple of science fiction for exactly that reason.
It definitely is.
It gives the reader a surrogate. But what elevates Venus Plus X, based on the source analysis, is that the amnesia isn't merely a structural convenience.
Okay, so it's doing more heavy lifting.
Much more. It is actually the central thematic pillar of the entire narrative. Sturgeon is using Charlie's memory loss to ask a fundamental philosophical question.
Which is?
What is human identity?
You mean like the idea that we are just a collection of our memories?
Precisely. If we look at the philosophical concept of personal identity, think of John Locke's memory theory. Your continuity of self is entirely dependent on your ability to remember your past experiences.
Right, because if I don't remember being me yesterday, am I still me today?
Exactly. Charlie Johns only exists as Charlie Johns because he remembers Laura and Miss Moran.
Oh, I see.
If you take those two specific memories away, the entity known as Charlie evaporates. So the book is implicitly asking you, right from page 1, if identity is constructed through memory, what happens when you alter or completely erase the memory?
Wow. Okay, so it's not just, I forgot where I parked my car. It's, if I forget my past, my actual self ceases to exist.
Yes. It turns those two names into his entire psychological survival kit.
That makes his clinging to those memories feel so much more desperate. He's not just trying to figure out his address.
No, he is fighting to remain a person. And that desperation frames his entire interaction with his new environment.
Because he's basically a fractured mind trying to make sense of a world that operates on rules he fundamentally cannot comprehend.
Exactly.
So if his memory is fractured, the immediate crisis isn't just who he is, but figuring out where he is, and more importantly, whose hands he's in.
And the people tending to him in this sunny terrarium aren't exactly giving straightforward answers right away.
Right. Charlie is introduced to this highly organized society. He doesn't just, wander around exploring on his own. He is guided by specific tutors.
Yes, the society is very neatly compartmentalized into departments.
And they refer to each department as a one, right?
Correct. And each tutor heads a different one.
So you have Sace, who is the head of science.
Mewis, heading medicine.
Right. Nasiv and Grosid, who oversee children.
And Philos, who is the tutor for history.
And through these specific guides, Charlie finally learns the name of the society. They call themselves Ledum.
Which is a very deliberate choice by Sturgeon.
I love this detail from the sources so much because it's just so brazen.
He really is.
If you spell Ledum backwards, it literally just spells model.
Yes, it's not subtle at all.
Not even a little. Sturgeon is basically winking at the reader, openly admitting, look, I am building a model society. This is a sociological sandbox.
I think it strips away the pretense. He isn't trying to convince you this is a gritty, plausible projection of the year 3000.
Right. It's not hard sci-fi in that way.
No, he is inviting you to examine a theoretical framework. And the core of that framework, the defining characteristic of the Ledum that truly shocks Charlie, is their biology.
Because Charlie initially assumes he's on another planet, right? He thinks he's dealing with aliens.
He does. But they aren't aliens.
They are humans, but they're completely biologically gender neutral.
Yes, every single member of the Ledum society is described as a hermaphrodite.
Meaning they possess both sets of reproductive organs.
Exactly. They have both male and female biological genital organs, which the text notes are fully functional and can retract or protrude as needed.
Now, if you are listening to this, we really have to pause and contextualize this within the era it was written.
That's a very important point.
Today, we have a very robust, nuanced vocabulary for discussing these concepts. We differentiate strongly between biological sex, gender expression, and gender identity.
Yes, we do.
But in 1960, those distinctions didn't really exist in mainstream cultural dialogue at all.
That's the crucial context. Sturgeon was writing in a time when sex and gender were viewed culturally as an absolute, inextricably linked binary.
You were one or the other, and that dictated your entire life path.
Precisely.
Yeah.
So to dismantle the social construct of gender roles, which was his ultimate goal, Sturgeon felt he had to use a literal biological hammer.
He had to break the biology to break the social rule.
Right. He physically merged the sexes in his model to force a society where it was biologically impossible to assign a gender role, because everyone was exactly the same.
If everyone has the exact same biology, you can't say, women stay in the kitchen and men go to work.
The entire foundation for that division is just erased.
It's a really blunt force approach to a complex sociological issue. But to make a society like this actually function as a utopia, Sturgeon couldn't just change their biology.
No, biology alone doesn't create utopia.
He had to change their economy and their technology, too.
Because sociological harmony is rarely achieved if everyone is still fighting over scraps of food.
Exactly. Poverty causes conflict. So Sturgeon equips Ledum with two massively powerful pieces of technology to solve that. The first is called the A field.
The A field is essentially the engine of their entire civilization.
And the sources describe it as a localized matter-antimatter reaction. Let's actually dig into the mechanics of that because it's fascinating.
It is a massive leap in energy production.
Right, because when matter and antimatter collide, they annihilate each other perfectly. According to Einstein's E equals mc squared, you get a 100% conversion of mass into pure energy.
Which is staggeringly efficient.
To put that in perspective, nuclear fission, like what we use in modern power plants today, only converts a tiny fraction of a percent of mass into energy.
So an A field means the Ledum have access to effectively infinite energy.
Infinite, completely clean energy.
And when you have infinite energy, you transition immediately into a post-scarcity economy.
Because energy is the bottleneck for everything else.
Exactly. With that much power, you can synthesize whatever materials you need. You can automate all essential labor.
Yeah.
You can build incredible architecture and produce wildly abundant food without anyone ever having to work for a paycheck.
Or star in the streets.
Right.
The economic friction that drives most human conflict, theft, war over resources, class division, it is just gone.
Swept away by technology.
And then you pair that economic freedom with their second technological marvel, which is the Cerebro style.
This one is perhaps even more staggering than the A field when you consider the publication year of 1960.
Oh, absolutely. The Cerebro style is a technology that allows for the direct physical implantation of knowledge straight into the human brain.
It's basically 1960s blueprint for modern brain-computer interfaces.
Like what companies like Neuralink are trying to develop today.
Very similar concept.
Yeah.
Instead of spending 20 years in schools and universities to become a doctor, you just use the Cerebro style.
It maps the neural pathways of medical knowledge and physically overwrites the synapses in a student's brain.
They literally download an entire career's worth of expertise.
In a matter of moments. It's wild.
And think about what that does to a society. It democratizes capability completely.
Oh, I didn't even think that.
Yeah, in a society with the Cerebro style, there is no educational inequality. No one is locked out of a profession because they couldn't afford college or didn't have access to good teachers.
You just pursue what you are temperamentally suited for, and the machine gives you the necessary data.
It levels the playing field instantly.
So let's look at the culture that blossoms from this foundation. You have infinite energy, instant education, and complete biological uniformity. What do the Ledum actually value? What is their day-to-day culture like?
Well, according to the text, the primary pillar of their culture is what they call child worship.
Child worship.
Yes, they have completely abandoned traditional religion.
Okay.
There's actually a line in the text where a Ledum states that it is inconceivable they would ever obey a deity.
Wow. So they swapped gods for children.
Essentially, yes. They revere children above all else.
Which makes total sense for a model society, right? Children are the uncorrupted future. They are the pristine continuation of the experiment.
They represent pure potential.
And what about romance or mating? How does a hermaphroditic society handle that?
Mating in Ledum is purely consensual and described as highly pleasurable.
Okay.
But the key is that it has been entirely decoupled from societal progression.
What do you mean by that?
It is no longer the driving force of human interaction. It isn't culturally elevated as the pinnacle expression of human love the way it often is in our society.
So it's not this huge dramatic thing.
Exactly. It is simply a pleasant bonding activity. It's been stripped of all the possessive, jealous, or transactional baggage that so often accompanies it in binary human societies.
This all sounds incredibly serene. I mean, maybe a little sterile, but very peaceful.
The text spends a lot of time luxuriating in this serenity. Sturgeon is clearly very enamored with his own creation here.
He definitely is. But as I was reviewing the notes on how Ledum functions day to day, I hit this massive, glaring contradiction.
Ah, yes. I think I know what you're referring to.
You're thinking of the agriculture, right?
The agriculture.
Yes. Okay, so think about this. You have the A field. You have infinite energy. And from that, infinite, easily synthesized food. It is the ultimate magic wand for poverty and hunger.
Truly post-scarcity.
Right. Yet every single Ledum child is forced to learn how to farm. The text says they are taught to eke a living from the soil.
It does seem completely absurd on the surface.
If you have a magic machine that makes perfect food instantly, why on earth are you forcing your kids to dig in the dirt and struggle with crops?
It seems counterintuitive until you look at the psychological mechanics of maintaining a utopia.
Okay, lay it on me.
How does a society with limitless bounty avoid collapsing into total decadent stagnation?
Because if you never have to try, if everything is just handed to you, you just atrophy.
Precisely. If there's no struggle, there's no resilience. The Ledum are acutely aware of the human need for challenge.
They know we need friction.
Yes. So they deliberately manufacture hardship. They artificially introduce the struggle of agriculture to their children to ensure the population doesn't lose its connection to effort.
To physical labor.
To physical labor and to the unpredictable reality of the natural world.
Yeah.
It builds what we might call a struggle muscle.
I love that phrase, a struggle muscle. It's artificial friction. They're preventing themselves from becoming like pampered, apathetic pets of their own technology.
That's a great way to put it. It shows that the Ledum model isn't just about solving physical scarcity.
It's deeper than that.
It's a highly curated, deeply psychological engineering project designed to produce a very specific type of citizen.
A resilient citizen. But to really grasp the magnitude of what the Liddim are trying to achieve, we can't just look at the solution they came up with.
No, we have to look at the problem they were trying to solve.
Exactly. We need to understand the exact societal disease that the Liddim were engineered to cure, which means we have to leave the sunny terrarium for a moment.
We have to look at the foils Sturgeon created.
Right. Because the novel doesn't just stay in Liddim. It uses this dual oscillating narrative structure.
Alternating chapters.
Yeah. Alternating with Charlie's story are these interspersed slice-of-life vignettes set in near-future 1960s-style suburban America.
We follow two families, the Rails and the Smiths.
And the contrast is just jarring. You go from this soaring, philosophical, post-scarcity utopia straight into the grinding, empty routine of mid-century suburban life.
And Sturgeon does this to provide a control variable. He wants to show the reader exactly what Lenham is reacting against.
He's showing his work.
Exactly. He once stated that his goal with this book was to write a decent book about sex.
But he didn't mean the physical act, right?
No, he meant a sociological dissection of how the division of the sexes and the rigid cultural baggage attached to it poisons a society.
And if you look at the 1950s and 60s, the Eisenhower and Kennedy eras, the nuclear family was this incredibly rigid, heavily enforced construct.
It was very clearly defined.
Men went to work in suits, women stayed home in aprons, and in these suburban chapters, we see how deeply unhappy that structure makes everyone involved.
It's a very bleak picture.
The lives of these families are described as empty and routine. They are saturated with sexism, gender stereotyping, and this bizarre, hypocritical obsession with sex.
A society obsessed with sex, yet simultaneously viewing it as inherently shameful.
More shameful than violence, the text points out.
Yes, and what's fascinating is that they have advanced technology in the suburbs too, but it doesn't solve anything.
Right, the electronic babysitter.
The book features this electronic babysitter. It's designed to free women from the physical chores of child rearing, supposedly giving them more freedom.
But because the underlying sociological structure hasn't changed, the technology doesn't liberate them.
Not at all. It just gives them more time to sit around and be neurotic about their suffocating gender roles.
Our source analysis highlights that these suburban chapters act as a mirror reflecting the specific cultural anxieties of 1960. We see two colliding trends in these families.
Right. On one hand, there is a slow convergence of male and female roles.
Probably spurred on by technologies like that electronic babysitter.
Yeah.
The rigid lines are starting to blur just a little bit.
But on the other hand, there is a violent reactionary pushback against that blurring.
Exactly. As the roles converge, society panics. They double down on traditional identities, enforcing stereotypes even harder to maintain the status quo. Now, I have to be the devil's advocate here for a second.
Go ahead.
A lot of contemporary critics, and even our own source notes, point out that these suburban chapters are, well, underdeveloped.
They're definitely the less flashy part of the book.
Yeah, they are kind of meandering, they lack narrative drive, and honestly, they can be a bit boring to read compared to the mind-expanding sci-fi stuff happening in Liddim.
I can see why a reader might feel that way.
So why did Sturgeon keep them in? If they're the weakest part of the book structurally, why are they essential?
Because without them, Liddim has no context.
No context.
Right. If you just present Liddim on its own, it looks like an arbitrary, weird fantasy. Why go to all this trouble to remove gender?
It just seems like an eccentric thought experiment.
Exactly. But when you place it directly against the quiet, suffocating misery of the Rails and the Smiths, you understand the why.
The motivation becomes clear.
You see the exact, specific human misery. The sexism, the emptiness, the shame that the Liddim model was built to eradicate. The mundane hell of the suburbs gives the utopia its profound meaning.
Oh, I see. It's the before picture in a cosmic infomercial.
That is a perfect analogy.
Okay, so let's check back in on Charlie. Up to this point, Charlie, and the reader, for that matter, is operating under a massive assumption.
A very natural assumption given the genre.
Right. He believes he is a time traveler. He thinks he was plucked out of that miserable, sexist past and dropped into this highly evolved, natural future.
He believes he is looking at the natural evolutionary endpoint of humanity.
But he's not. The climax of this novel delivers a sequence of revelations that completely shatters the utopian facade.
The illusions fall away.
The ground just falls out from under Charlie, and the entire genre of the book shifts from utopian exploration to something incredibly dark.
The first revelation is that Charlie is not a time traveler. Time travel does not exist in this universe.
So what is he? How did he get there?
He is a control person.
A control person, like in an experiment.
Precisely. The Leadham Society is essentially a massive, ongoing scientific experiment. And in any experiment, you need a control group.
A baseline to measure your results against.
Right. Charlie is that baseline. He is an unaltered human from the outside world, kept isolated in this terrarium so they can observe how an ancient gendered mind reacts to their perfected genderless society.
Which begs a terrifying question. If Charlie is the unaltered human, what does that make the Ludum?
And here is the dark secret that breaks the novel wide open.
Yeah.
Leadham did not evolve. They are not natural mutants.
Their biological gender neutrality is a deliberate, meticulously maintained construction.
It is not a shift in consciousness or a natural biology. It is a surgical intervention.
They achieve this state through mandatory monthly medical procedures.
Let that sink in.
Everyone in the society has to undergo clinical, surgical alterations every single month to maintain their hermaphroditic state.
If you're listening to this right now, you're probably feeling that same sense of horror that Charlie felt.
I definitely felt it reading the notes.
We all love the idea of world peace, but hearing that it requires mandatory, state-enforced physical alteration, that triggers a massive, visceral red flag about bodily autonomy.
The peace is real, but it is bought and paid for with a scalpel.
And we see the human cost of this through Charlie's history tutor, Philos.
Right, Philos is hiding something.
Philos loves Leadham, but he has a secret. He has a partner, Foray, and a child, Suit. And Philos is hiding them because he refuses to let his child be subjected to these forced medical procedures.
He wants out.
He recognizes the fundamental violation of bodily autonomy and is trying to opt his family out of the utopia.
It introduces this classic dystopian dilemma. Is perfect harmony worth the complete mandated surrender of your physical self?
A question that is just as relevant today.
And just as Charlie is reeling from the realization that this entire society is medically enforced, Sturgeon drops the final, most devastating twist.
The final shoe drops.
Charlie isn't Charlie.
The theme of identity and memory we discussed earlier reaches its terrifying conclusion here.
The man walking around the terrarium is actually named Quizboo.
Quizboo.
Yeah, Quizboo is a biological anomaly in Leadham. He is one of the rare individuals born as a one-sexed person. He was born physically male.
Outside the medical system.
Right. The Leadham authorities needed a control subject, but they couldn't just kidnap someone from the outside world. So they found a real dying man named Charlie Johns in the outside world.
And this is where the cerebrocell comes back into play.
The same machine they used to download physics textbooks into students' brains. They used it to extract the dying man's consciousness.
They digitally ripped Charlie's memories, his personality, his love for Laura, his memories of Miss Moran, entirely out of his brain.
And they downloaded that data directly into Quizboo's brain.
Overwriting Quizboo's original identity completely.
Think about the mechanism of that. The cerebrostyle physically maps the synaptic pathways of a human life and forces the neuroplasticity of the host brain to conform to that map.
It essentially deletes the hard drive and installs a completely different operating system.
That is horrifying. It brings up such intense existential dread.
It's the ultimate violation.
If Charlie's memories are running like software on Quizboo's biological hardware, does Charlie actually exist? Is he just a ghost made of data?
That is the question.
The real Charlie died. The body walking around is Quizboo, but Quizboo's mind was murdered to make room for the data.
It is the ultimate violation of the self. And it fundamentally proves Sturgeon's initial thesis. Identity is entirely a construct built on memory.
So Charlie, or Quizboo, or whoever he is faced with this mountain of horrifying truth. The society is medically enforced cage, and his own mind is a stolen implant.
He's trapped on every level.
Philos begs Charlie to use the time machine to take his child, Suiton, back to the past to escape the surgeries. Charlie agrees to help.
But the tragedy deepens.
The time machine is a fake.
It was nothing more than a theatrical prop built by the Leadham to convince the control subject of his own backstory.
There is no escape. Charlie is trapped.
And this leads to the explosive climax.
Mullis, the head of medicine and essentially the architect of this experiment, sits Charlie down. The illusions are gone. The experiment is over.
Mullis asks Charlie for his final, unfiltered opinion on the Leadham society.
How does the 1960s mind process the ultimate utopian reality?
It rejects it. Violently.
Charlie completely explodes. He looks at these people who have eradicated war, who have ended hunger, who live in absolute peace, and he calls them all freaks.
A total rejection.
He tells them with absolute venomous certainty that if the outside world ever found out they existed, humanity would unite just to slaughter every last one of them.
He is offering a profound condemnation. But let's dig into why he rejects it.
Yeah, why? He has lived there. He knows the peace is real. Why does his disgust override all logic?
The source material is very clear about the psychology here. Charlie's reaction is rooted in intense homophobia and a fundamental biological inability to conceive of an existence without a binary gender division.
We can use the computer analogy again here, actually.
Okay.
It's like trying to run modern software on a computer built in 1995. Charlie's brain, his implanted consciousness, is hardwired with a 1960s operating system where the gender binary is the fundamental base-level code of reality.
Right.
When you try to install the LEDM reality, a completely non-binary application, his system doesn't just glitch, it suffers a fatal crash. It fundamentally cannot process the data.
He cannot comprehend a human being that isn't a man or a woman. Yeah. And because he can't categorize them, they become monstrous to him.
He is essentially saying, I would rather the world burn down than look like you.
Emilius, listening to this furious rejection, calmly makes his final assessment. He knocks Charlie unconscious and states simply that humanity is not yet ready for gender equality.
The experiment has failed.
The Leadum couldn't assimilate the binary mind. The prejudice is too deeply ingrained.
And the ending of the novel drives this pessimistic point home with a sledgehammer. Outside the protective A field, the real humanity, with all its gender roles, its binaries, and its conflicts, finally pushes the button.
Nuclear bombs begin to fall.
Humanity annihilates itself in atomic fire.
But inside the terrarium, shielded by the A field, Leadum survives perfectly intact.
And Charlie is allowed to live, but he is exiled. He is forced to live on the very fringes of the Leadum society, with Philos, Frore, and Suiton watching the world outside burn to ashes.
The ending is left intentionally, painfully ambiguous. Sturgeon refuses to give the reader an easy answer.
Right. Is Leadum a paradise that successfully escaped the fatal flaws of humanity? Or is it a tragic dystopian means for human preservation?
Is it just a sterile terrarium for a species that couldn't survive in the wild without surgically castrating its own nature?
You have the survival of the species, but at the cost of bodily autonomy. You have total peace, but enforced by medical mandate. It is a knot of impossible contradictions.
And that ambiguity is exactly why the book has maintained such a lasting legacy.
Which brings us to how this book was received and its place in history. Venus Plus X made a massive impact. It was a finalist for the Hugo Award for Best Novel in 1961.
And David Pringle included it in his definitive book, Science Fiction, The 100 Best Novels.
But beyond the sci-fi accolades, it is deeply respected as a proto-feminist work.
And proto is the key word there. It preceded the massive cultural earthquakes of the sexual revolution and second-wave feminism of the late 1960s and 70s.
Sturgeon was trying to dismantle gender roles at a time when most of America was still firmly entrenched in the rigid suburban conformity we saw with the Rail and Smith families.
Even the title of the book is a reflection of this attempt to break the binary.
Yes. The title, Venus Plus X, it actually comes from a specific moment of Charlie's internal crisis.
When he's trying to categorize them.
He is trying to mathematically categorize the Lidum. He thinks about the old astronomical symbols, the shield and spear of Mars for male, the hand mirror of Venus for female.
The classic symbols.
And he thinks, what in hell would they use for these? Mars plus Y, Venus plus X. He literally cannot compute their existence using the symbols he was taught.
He's trying to formulate a new mathematics for human identity.
Exactly.
Now, despite its thematic brilliance, the novel is not without its critics. A contemporary reviewer at the time called it a fiction-buffered sermon, not unlike the kind Heinlein likes to concoct.
A fiction-buffered sermon. Meaning the plot is really just a thin delivery mechanism for a lecture.
And the critics noted that the rambling plot prioritizes ideas heavily over action. It's a lot of walking around rooms having philosophical debates.
It is undeniably a novel of ideas first. Sturgeon is not writing a thriller. He is delivering a thesis on the social construct of gender.
He argued that presuming fundamental, insurmountable differences between men and women is not just factually incorrect, but actively, socially destructive.
It's the root cause of the conflict that leads to the nuclear annihilation at the end of the book. But, when I look at those critiques, that it's a sermon, that there's not enough action, that the suburban plot is boring, I actually think those weaknesses are the exact reason the book is so valuable today.
How so?
If you are studying the history of gender discourse, you don't necessarily want a slick, polished, action-packed space opera.
You want the substance.
You want the sermon. You want to see the exact clunky, messy way a thinker in 1960 was wrestling with these revolutionary ideas. The philosophical transparency of the book lays the discourse completely bare. You get to see the scaffolding of the thought experiment.
That's a very perceptive way to view it. The value lies in its transparency. Sturgeon forces the reader to engage with mechanics of the society, and by extension forces the reader to look in the mirror at their own societal programming.
He is asking you, the reader, a very direct question.
Are you, Charlie?
Yeah.
If you were offered total peace, but it didn't align with your deeply held biological or social constructs, would you burn the world down too?
It is a heavy, heavy question. And it brings us to the end of our deep dive today. We have covered an incredible amount of ground.
We certainly have.
We started with an amnesiac waking up in a sunlit terrarium, piecing together a world that had seemingly cured every human ailment by surgically removing gender.
We examined the stark contrast of that utopia against the suffocating, neurotic reality of 1960s suburban America.
Understanding why such a drastic model felt necessary to the author.
And we watched the terrifying realization unfold, that the peace was an illusion maintained by mandatory medical erasure.
And that the human mind, when faced with a reality it cannot categorize, will often choose apocalyptic violence over assimilation.
The science of the book, the A field, the Cerebro style, was speculative. But the sociological and psychological questions it raises about identity, autonomy, and the constructs we build our lives upon remain intensely relevant.
They absolutely do. And as we close out, I want to leave you, the listener, with a final thought to mull over.
A parting thought.
Take all the politics, all the 1960s context, and strip it away. Put yourself in Charlie's shoes for just a moment.
Imagine it's you.
Imagine a society that has definitively cured war. They have cured famine. Violence is a forgotten concept. You live in absolute safety and abundance. But the entry fee to live in this perfect world is the total mandatory erasure of your biological identity through continuous mandated medical intervention.
The ultimate price.
Ask yourself, does the moral victory of total world peace outweigh the moral violation of your bodily autonomy? If you woke up in that sun-drenched room knowing what you know now, would you submit to the procedure for the sake of global harmony?
Or would you hold on to your identity?
Would you stand outside the shield and watch the bombs fall? Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Keep questioning the constructs around you, and we'll see you next time.